Welcome to you all for attending the Aptus Business Solutions Stage 300 year-end webinar. And my name's Stacey Orick and I'm the Operations Manager at Aptus Business Solutions. Many of you may have attended this webinar previously, and I apologise if it's a little bit repetitive. This is a process that hasn't changed in the software over the years. I did happen to ask ChatGPT how to make this webinar a bit more engaging, and it did suggest an engaging speaker, but unfortunately, you're stuck with me today. So please try and not fall asleep. This webinar is designed to provide information in relation to Sage 300 year end and best practice recommendations for your organisation. Just a few administration things here is that we have got a few attendees, so we're going to be disabling mics as they come in. So if you've got any questions, just type them into the chat. And I've got Ben here who's monitoring that for me while I'm running this webinar. We will definitely make the recording available for those that may have missed the session or do want to refer to it later. So we'll be emailing that out to attendees. The information in this webinar is relevant for any year-end date. So it may be that you're not a 30th of June. It could be that you're a 31st of December. So let us, this applies either way. Another note is that if you've got any site-specific information that you might need or any details that you do want to check, then please don't hesitate to contact your consultant. Okay, so let's begin.
Well, that's you. Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Sage 300 makes year-end processing simple. It's a date-sensitive system designed to have multiple years of history and allow posting to multiple years. This is controlled through the locking of fiscal periods. Let's start by talking about what the year-end process actually does. Year-end does a number of different things. Firstly, it updates the current fiscal year to the next year and allows for posting in the general ledger to proceed. So you can have a look in your current systems by going to GL Setup Options and looking at the Posting tab to see what your current fiscal year is. And you can see on the slide here, I've highlighted the section. Okay, so the year end rolls that forward into the new financial year. The next thing is that for all balance sheet accounts and retained earnings accounts, it sets a system so the closing and opening balances for the prior and new year are the same. You can also see this, albeit probably a little bit small on the slide, but you can see how I've selected the end and I've got balances. But then if I change the closing period, you can see that it has moved those. Lastly, in relation to the income and expense accounts, it creates and posts a batch of GL transactions to close these accounts and reset all the income and expense accounts to ensure they have opening balances of 0 in the new financial year. Again, you can see that in the example on the slide. As part of the year-end process, it creates a large GL batch. This is an example of what you'd be expecting to see inside of the system. You can note here that the batch has a batch description specifically saying that it's closing entries, and you can see that the source code is GLCL. And this source code is reserved by the system for closing entries only. Now that you know what year end does, let's talk about some important questions you may be asking yourself. When should I perform year end? Clients traditionally wait until the majority of entries are processed prior to rolling the year end. They even wait until September or later after the audit team's been through, and I don't recommend this. During this time, when you operate on a system that you have not performed year end on, you will not be able to post any GL batches into the system. Thus, you lose any ability to report from your general ledger. We encourage you to perform your year end as soon as possible, preferably the 1st of July 2023, which in this instance is a Saturday. So you've all got my permission to wait at least till Monday. The only implication of you doing your year end before all entries are complete is that every entry dated pre 1st of July 23 will create some extra entries when posting, and it can slightly slow down posting. But this is a pretty minor disadvantage to be able to get real time reporting still. The next consideration is what happens if I need to put an entry back into a prior fiscal year. Once a fiscal year or year is closed, entries can still be posted back at any time. This is assuming you've got rights to open and close fiscal periods and years in the fiscal calendar. So you can do this at any time, now or in the future. When you do this, Sage just continues to close off each entry to the closing accounts and create additional posting journals. So to the user, this is pretty seamless. You can see here in this example of a posting journal that's had the additional entries created because I posted back to a prior year. Other questions might be is that can I post my year-end adjustments into a separate period? You may or may not be familiar, but Sage 300 has a number of other periods that you may not have utilised. It does reserve a fiscal period 13 if you're running a 4-week calendar. It can also have an adjustment period, which is recognised in the database as fiscal period 14, and fiscal period 15 is for closing entries only. Period 15 transactions are not available for viewing in any standard reports. They can be viewed using some additional functions in your financial reporter, and they may not appear as individual transactions. So if you need any assistance with having these appear on any of your financial reporter reports, let us know. We do have a number of clients, though, that really find the benefit of posting any adjustments around year end to the fiscal period 14 means that they can separately flag their adjustment entries so they can prepare unaudited and audited reports. It also allows you to keep your final operating period free from large year end accounting adjustments, and it preserves it year over year for comparability for that period. Using a 14th period also allows you to lock a previous year's regular periods to avoid accidental entries, while still allowing you to make adjustments to a previous year while working on a new year. So note that the little screenshot on the screen here is from the General Ledger Journal screen when you hit the drop down box and you can see the fiscal periods available. It's only available in GL. You will not be able to see this for use in any of the sub ledgers. Okay. After you've considered these questions, there are a number of things that you can start doing right now. So you could come off this webinar and start considering and actually acting on some of these things. So we're going to go through and I'll show you on the screens inside of Sage at the end, but I don't want to jump in and out of PowerPoint. So we'll just sort of discuss these at this stage. What I want you to start thinking about is your year end date. Discuss this with your team. Talk about dates for cutting off entry of transactions into the system. For example, any accounts payable invoices that come in after the 7th of July, are they going to be entered in the new financial year? Work out what actual day you'll be performing year end and communicate this to your staff. This is also a good time to talk about putting entries that cross fiscal periods into separate batches. Um, Many of you may remember that if you try and post a batch without the year end being done, you will get an error batch. So at this time, or probably later in June, users will start to maybe batch their accounts payable batches into entries pre and post 1st of July to avoid that error batch being generated. Creating the new fiscal calendar. On the first day of a new year, you may not be ready to close your GL, but you will certainly want to continue processing new transactions in your submodules. For example, you'd like to continue raising sales invoices in accounts receivable or order entry. To do this, you will need to make sure that the new financial year has been created in your fiscal calendar so that the Sage 300 is aware of the new fiscal periods. To do this, you must have rights to access the fiscal calendar in Common Services. So you might need to log in, see if you can see it, and talk to an administrator if you don't have that. Please note, if you are going to go and do this step, which I'll show you later in a demonstration, that you may wish to lock all of the fiscal periods that aren't required yet, as it's really common for users to incorrectly key financial year and periods during this transition period. Just so you know, a bit of a tip is that some clients actually have a large number of future years open as they are storing future year budgets, and it allows them to report on them directly out of the system. Check the number of years of history. Our clients run various versions of Sage 300, and it's only the premium edition, which maintains 99 years of history. Advanced and standard only store 7 years of history. However, this is all dependent on what's flagged in your setup options. And I'll show you later how to check this. This is really important because if you run year end on your system with, say, for example, it's set to 5 and you're now in your 6th year of operation, you'll be starting to clear history. There's no way back. Once you've done this, the only way to gather that information back is to restore a backup. If you are limited by the system as to the number of years history, we can easily help you in creating an archive of that database and having it on the Sage 300 start list. So there are options for you. You just need to talk to us before you run year end, not after. Check the retained earnings account. A lot of these systems have been set up for a very long time, so this is going to be correct. But business processes change. But this is the account that the Create New Year processes closes all the income and expense accounts to. Um, and you can change the default closing account before you do the year end if something has changed. A lot of clients don't know that you can close to multiple retained earnings accounts. So if you need more information on this, please just reach out. We always do a bit of a check of your chart of accounts at this point in time. The most common problem clients call us about is that after year end has been done, some of the P&L accounts that should have been cleared still have balances. This is because if the account type is flagged incorrectly, the year end process doesn't know which accounts to roll. And once year end's been completed, there's a few steps to have to try and adjust that, or restoring from a backup is one of your options. So to avoid this, export the chart of accounts, check all the accounts are flagged correctly, and we'll go through that process. Um, if you each module allows for automatic posting of GL batches, and if you leave this on, then you're going to get a lot of error batches thrown into your GL. So what we can do is we turn that off for this period of time, and then we can turn it back on after the year end. And I'll explain this in the demo as well. Okay, we need to consider our auto reversing journals. Just think about them. What's going to happen is if you've got any reversing on period 1 of fiscal year 23, these batches will most likely cause error batches. Now, it's not a big problem. You'll be able to post them once year end is complete, but it's always good to let users know a bit of a heads up that they might start to see that because then they don't panic. Okay. Okay. Another thing that you should be doing, and you should do this not just now, is talk to your IT about your backups and your integrity of data. Um, Over the past, well, even the COVID period, we've seen a number of clients have ransomware attacks and realize that their backups and weren't in a routine that they had expected. So it's always worth having a chat to find out how quickly you can restore your data and how far back you can go back with your data. So you should have that discussion with your IT department. You'll also want to talk to them about coordinating a time to schedule a backup because a lot of sites will want to keep one prior to year end. Okay. We also don't recommend that you start to do any of the actual year end functions without backing up your data because if something did go wrong, it would put your data into a state that we needed to restore. You can do your own backups with the Sage database dump feature. If you're not familiar with that feature yourself, then just let us know. But it's also worth noting that if you are going to dump data, if your database is large, you'll need to just make sure with IT somewhere on your network that you could dump that you won't be causing any space issues. Also, in the coming weeks before year end, we also say it's great to have a bit of a look at your month end procedures. If they're streamlined and running smoothly, you'll find that your year end will be a lot quicker. And if you don't, if you do reconciliations more regularly, you'll find that the year end's quite quick. So you don't need to do them, but we always talk to clients about are you balancing your age trial balance to the trade debtors account in the general ledger? Are you balancing your trade creditors GL account, your bank rec to the GL? Because of the batch processing nature of Sage, these modules can get out of whack if you are just performing journals to any of these GL accounts. So it's always good to regularly balance things like the inventory valuation report to the stock on hand report, things like that. If you need any help with that, please have a chat. Okay. Right. These steps that I'm just going to talk about here are things to sort of consider, but they'll be the last steps after, prior to actually clicking the year end button. Some clients, and I'm not sure of the ones that are on the call, you may have other modules, and it may be things like Cashbook or norming fixed assets. Some of those modules do require norming, in particular, requires a year end process. So you just need to sort of consider that in. You can run the year end in Sage first and then go and do the norming fixed assets one later. There's not a priority that you have to do one before the other. Some clients also use things on, say, for example, in their accounts payable vendors, they might be using the statistics on the vendor activity tabs, and they might be resetting those. And they're really important, they're time sensitive. If you are using those, you will need to reset those as close or as near as possible to the 1st of July so that they can start accumulating again. Again, if you're not sure, I'm planting these sort of in your mind so that you can have a bit of a think about, so that you can ask us any questions if you need. Okay, the next thing before actually clicking the button, you'll be doing a day end process if you're running the inventory modules. It just helps push all the batches through the system. We make sure everything's posted. We make sure that we back up. And when you do go to run the year end function, it will want all users out of the system. It'll give you a message and tell you you cannot run it while there's users in. And having in the past, some of our support calls have included the icon on this PowerPoint has got a little orange icon with a key in it. That's the Orchid document link product. That one will make it look like there are users still in the system. So if you're the one trying to run year end and you're constantly being told there's users still in the system, you may need to exit that out of your toolbar. Okay, that one's always a bit of a trap. Okay. There's some things that we no longer really do or place too much emphasis on. Clearing history, resetting batch numbers, and printing and filing all the SAGE reports. Used to be something when space was a bit of an issue. These are all still things that you should possibly consider, but we don't recommend them as part of the year end process. There's no need to reset batch numbers unless you've got a real specific requirement. Keeping the history there is always good, because as soon as I've always found that as soon as we clear some history, someone wants to go looking for it. Okay, so contact us if this is a project you do need to do, but separate that from your year end process. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is I'm going to move into just showing you a number of the things that we just talked about inside Sage 300 itself. So I'm just going to change screens, and I'll confirm with Ben that he's going to be able to see my Sage 300 window. Perfect. Now I'm logged into, I've got Sage 300 current version 2023, and that's what this interface looks like. Um, Now, so the first thing that I've sort of directed people to do is go in, and you can do this straight after this meeting. You can go to Common Services, Fiscal Calendar, and we can create the new fiscal year. Okay. This might look a little bit odd. It's American sample data, but what we're doing is just creating that fiscal year, and I'm hitting add. Okay, so and this is where I mentioned that once you create that, you'll be able to have users being able to continue to process into the system. So that's where I said if you are doing it now and you're not ready, make sure that you just lock your fiscal periods. You can lock them all at the same time. There would be someone usually responsible in your organisation for opening up and closing these periods. If not, then it should be something that you're looking at doing, because it helps with if you've reported and you need to cut off, people won't be able to process back into the system. Okay, the next thing I spoke about checking was going and seeing how many years of history that you do have. So that is in GL setup options, and it's on the posting tab. And you can see here that I've got 99 years of history set. So this is the bit that you need to just check and make sure. You can see here your current fiscal year and your oldest year of fiscal sets. If you were on 7 and this was, lining up, you'll be able to see that it would be probably clearing some data that you might want. Okay, on the account tab is where we talked about that default closing account. So you can see there, you can just double check. When you use the Finder key, it will only show you accounts that are of retained earnings type anyway. Okay. The next bit that we talked about was that to go and check your chart of accounts. Now, the easiest way that I find to do that is that I go to my general ledger, GL accounts, and I just go to my chart of accounts screen. Sort of lists all of my accounts. I can either scroll down it and I can see that these ones are all balance sheets. What I'd be looking for is something maybe sticking out like an income account in these ranges. Um, Depending on how big your chart is, you may want to um, go into an account and export these out to Excel. You might want to do a bit of a spot check. You can just click through OK, and it just wants a path to drop down, and that will drop all the accounts out in Excel file. You can also, if I just go here, if you wanted to, you can use these set criteria buttons and say that you want to drop out just all the balance sheet or all the income or all the retained. So a lot of users I notice don't use the set criteria and the filters very much when they're doing exporting. So that's just a bit of an option there. Okay. So once you've checked those main things, your um, main work's really done. This is the stuff that you would be doing in the lead up um, to year end. And really, the system's just waiting for that day that you've worked out that you want to actually run the physical year end process. So we mentioned that before doing that, that I would go in and I would probably check that as much has been posted as possible. So I'm just going to go to my accounts payable invoice batch list just to sort of show you that you can sort of see are all the AP batches posted. I'm using that flag and I'm having a bit of a look. That zero batch is fine. So you'd go through your modules and have a bit of a look, make sure everything's posted. If you're running day end, you would be coming into your inventory and your periodic processing and running day end just to make sure as much as possible is pushed through. The other thing that I did mention is that whether your auto posting is turned on or off, each module has the ability to, if I go to setup and GL integration, you'll see that under create GL transactions by, am I creating and posting a new batch or am I just creating a new batch? So creating and posting means it's auto posting. So you can see my system's been just turned to create the batch. So this is what I'm talking about when I say, has the auto posting been turned off? Just as a side note, this is the location of where the system's been told what information to pass through to the general ledger. So if you're finding in any of your reconciliation reports that you're doing all the time and there's not enough information in your general ledger transaction listings from the submodules, it's because these might need some tweaking. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that in there as that's something that I've been working on with a number of clients recently. Okay, so you can turn off the auto posting, the auto reversing will just be that those that are using it know that when they create journals, they can either say that it's an auto reversing and specify. So they would have had journals in the system. And if they've got like, if you're doing them at period 12 and it's next period, the next period's in that locked fiscal year. So those ones, if you try to post them, will throw a batch and say, cannot post to future fiscal year. Okay. So once you've done all those sort of spot checks and everything inside the system, um, if you're um, uh, ready to, you've talked to your IT, you've done your backup, you've got all your users out of the system, then it's a simple method of that all you need to do to run the year-end process is go to GL periodic processing and create new year. So it's really a one click to create the year end itself. You can see it's telling me that I've got, and I've run this a few times to test that it works. So I'm in 2023 at the moment. This is telling me that it's going to create new accounts and process me into the 2024 fiscal year. and it's telling me, it's warning me if it was going to clear history. So read this screen. Do not just click over it. It will give you important information about what number of years are going to be cleared. So yeah, so then all I need to do is just hit process. Now, if I had had users in the system, it would have come up right there and then and said cannot run because you have users in the system. Okay, so the um, year end's now been created, and my big closing journal batch should be sitting there. Now, this data hasn't had a lot of stuff done on it, so I'm just going to show you the example of the prior year. So you can see that lots of entries have sort of been created in here, and it's created that closing, and it's using that retained earnings account. Okay, so it's gone through that whole process. Okay, so that was actually really, when it comes down to it, the real year end part is actually quite simple. It's the preparation that is the key. I'm just going to jump back to actually, I will stay here. I do have a slide for this, but I will just be jumping back and forth. Um, after it's been, after year end's been done, if you've had any error batches that were sort of generating during that period of time between now and there, you just go into your general ledger and do a lot of posting. Okay, so if there was any sitting here, you'd come in and you'd post anything that hadn't been posted. You can print any reports if you're concerned that you might want to do some double checking. One tip that I have is that some users have never used what I call the GL source journal report. Um, Now, I'll just go to here because I've put the icons that I need for that. Is a GL source journal report allows me to tell the system to go in and look through the whole database and pull out anything with GL, CL on it. So what I've done is I've set this up, and I have got instructions for how to do this in some consideration notes that I'll send back out to you. What that means then, and I'll just show you an example of what other ones that you can do. If you're checking for a certain type of transaction, you can make all those sort of source codes available. What that means then is I will be able to run a report, and it's the only report in Sage that does have date sensitivity to it rather than just fiscal periods. If I just hit print, what it does is once year end's been done, or even in a few months, if you wanted, someone said, pull me out all the journals that occurred due to year end, it's going to go through the system and pull everything out that's had that closing flag on it. Okay, so it's quite a useful report. Okay, I'm going to just jump back now to the slide we just talked about. Oh, and sorry, turn back on all your auto posting if you did turn that off. So you'd go back into your GL, to your AP setup options in your integration tab, and go back in and set those things. Now, just a couple further things is that many users are sort of not aware that there's a lot of resources online. So all the Sage helps online. The Sage documentation checklists are sort of in these locations. You can log on to your Sage system, go to the task ribbon, click help, and it will send you through the web page. And there's actually a year end procedures. There's also a year end centre, and it's got some valuable resources there that can guide you through the process. And that's the link for it there. They also do have some little videos on how to start a new year, how to close a fiscal year, how to create a backup, and how to print reports. So it's quite a useful little resource. If you do try and log on to any of these links and it's saying you need to sign in, if you have any trouble with logins, just let us know. We can help you through that. The other resource that's available is the Sage University. There are some free courses in there. Some of them are that you may need to pay for them, but especially when a new version comes out, there's always a refresher on it. You do need a login. Again, if you're having trouble creating that, let us know and we can help you out with that. Okay, just a couple final tips. There's provisional posting inside of Sage 300. This always comes up around year end if you're not quite ready to finalize some of your year end journals. If you don't know about the provisional posting button, it means you haven't seen it on your GL batch list. It may be that this flag's not turned on, and that is in GL setup options. Now, the provisional posting is just like a what if scenario. It means you can post a journal, run a trial balance to see the impact, and if you're not happy with it, go back, fix the journal. So it just sort of helps you. Certainly helps me out on a Friday after 3 o'clock when I've forgotten my debits and my credits. Another tip is that you've got your um, third party products, your norming, your awkward. We did talk about those. But also don't underestimate the time needed. Some of you do have significant chart of accounts. Okay. When I ran that year end process, I've got very small sample data, very small chart of accounts, very few years of history. So it was pretty quick, but I have seen some people need to sort of allow at least half an hour to an hour for that to run. And because you're asking users to be out of the system, that's why I say negotiate a time with them that it's going to be possible for you to run year end. Okay. Um, if you need to, I find first thing in the morning is the best time to run it because at worst you will have your night before's backup if you need to restore to. So if you've sort of started to do it and not talked to IT about a backup, there should be that one as a minimum. Okay, another thing I just want to talk to is about visual process flows. I am going to flick back to Sage one last time and show you what I have set up there. But if you're not seeing visual process flows, it is something that needs to be assigned to users. It's been in Sage for a little while. I'm just going to jump to one that I prepared earlier, and I've created the Aptus year-end visual process flow. Users traditionally in Sage 300 have flicked through the system via the menu bars. These visual process flows allow us to set up sort of one-stop shops that make it easier for users to train new users. But it means that I can put all the things that I use regularly on a screen so that, say for example, year end you only do once a year. I can have these icons here that I can click on and it will go, that's where I need to create the new fiscal year. This is where I go to my options to check. This is how to check my GL accounts. So you can set that up. They're user specific. They're super easy to edit. You can edit them. You're dragging things around. If I need to make that link, all I'm doing is going to the nice list. And whoops, and this did this yesterday. You just choose the function that you're going to. So talk to me about the visual process flows and yeah, it's really worth setting some up. Okay, then lastly, we've just got a couple tips that some clients have asked me. We've had our organisation bought out or we've had a change in structure. We want to be able to change our fiscal calendar from a 30 June end to a January, December. It is possible. There are utilities available that we can do that with. So just have a chat to us. I've got a list of sort of common issues that users experience. We have the one cannot post a future year. That's what happens if you have not rolled your year. You're going to get lots of you users say to you, I just tried to post a batch of invoices and I just got a message saying cannot post a future year. That's what's going to happen when you have not run year end on your system. Okay. The revenue and expense accounts amounts are not transferred to retained earnings. That's where we talked about that if you've got your chart of accounts set up incorrectly. We talked about what happens if you've got users in the system. You're not going to be able to run year end. And probably because I get lots of calls about it, I've accidentally doubled that one up on the slide that you can't post to future years. Okay, we do have a list of how to manually fix if you've posted to the wrong GL accounts. So this is the steps that you need to do if you had a balance sheet flagged as income or income flagged as balance sheet. So they're the tips there. Just conscious of time, I've run over a little bit. So I will just open this up to questions. I'm not sure if we've got any in the chat. Do you wanna, I'll get Ben to maybe read that out to me if he doesn't mind. So the visual processes are, sorry, I'll just go to the question. It is standard within Sage 300. Yes, all of you, regardless of version, whether you're standard uh, or premium or advanced, you should have that accessible. But if you're not logging in as admin or if you're not been assigned it, you may not see it, and that's the trap, and that's why I like to raise it. Yep, I'll definitely make a recording available to everybody, and we'll send that out to the attendees, and we'll probably even just put it on the website and make it available there as well. Okay, so that's everything that I wanted to say. Just to make sure that don't stress over year end. You saw that the actual year end is just one click of a button. But there is those preparation steps. So over the next month, if you're confused about any that I have raised, then don't hesitate to drop me a line. You can use the support at aptusbusiness.com.au email address that comes into our support mailbox. But yeah, feel free to give me a call. Excellent. We'll close that session off. Thank you, everybody.